What's going on YouTube? It's your boy Cat Life here, bringing you another Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel video. Today we are going to be talking about certain staples that you can play to go ahead and try to make your TEARLAMENT matchup easier. And when I say easier, I don't mean that you're automatically going to be winning your match, because TEARLAMENT is the best deck for a reason. It's probably the best deck ever created in Yu-Gi-Oh! Of all time. And you guys are seeing what they're able to do with even the nerfs. This is how good this deck is, right? So my point is, I wanted to go ahead and drop like a video on certain cards that you could tech if your deck could run it. That way you could go ahead and try to get the upper hand against TEARLAMENTs. So let's go ahead and start off. First thing I do want to say is thank you all for supporting the channel. If you are new to the channel, do not forget to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, as it really does help my channel grow, and I would really appreciate it. But yes, let's go and start off with the best card, I think, to go ahead and tech. DD Crow. Now, DD Crow is really good, and I'm pretty sure you guys are all finding this out. Is because with DD Crow, you can essentially go ahead and basically hit any of their TEARLAMENT cards and banish it, and by banishing the TEARLAMENT, the fusion will not go off in the graveyard because it has to be sent back into the deck. This is why a lot of people are main decking DD Crow now, just because that is useful, and because of the fact that you can activate this card more than once per turn. It doesn't have a restriction like Ash Blossom or Ghost Bell or Ghost Cherries or Ghost Ogre, right? It's not a once per turn. It's very similar to how Effect Veiler works, where Effect Veiler just says no. So it's really good, and you can activate this on your turn and your opponent's turn, so it's a little different from Veiler in that sense too. As Veiler, you can only activate on the opponent's turn during the main phase. This can activate during main phase, battle phase, end phase, draw phase, you know, just at any time. So anyways, moving on to the second card, we are looking at actually Ghost Reaper and Winter Cherries. Now I'm going to be honest, this could potentially work, but the issue with Ghost Cherries is, number one, your opponent has to have more cards on the field than you do, and then number two, you're going to have to get rid of something in your extra deck, and then you have to hope that the card that they get rid of, right, is in your extra deck as well. So let's say, for instance, you go and activate Ghost Reaper and Winter Cherries, right, and you go ahead and hit the Kikalos. Kikalos has to be in your deck personally. That way they can't go ahead and automatically try and escape out of this Kikalos. So basically, by banishing this card and revealing the cherries, you can get all these cards to be banished. Now the only issue with this card is that TEARLAMENTs do play a trap card, and the trap card is known as Crime. If Crime is milled to the graveyard, they can just use Crime to go ahead and get the Kikalos back as you banish this card, and they can add basically one of their banished cards back to their hand. But because it's a fusion monster, it can automatically go back to the deck, right? So that's the issue with Kikalos. I mean, with Ghost Reaper and with the Cherries. If I was to play this card though, I don't think I would end up hitting the Kikalos. I would probably end up hitting the Abyss Dweller if you're in a mirror match and you wanted to play this, and you knew that your opponent was setting up for like the Abyss Dweller play. But honestly, like, it's like I said, it's just a little niche tech. I don't really like it, but I mean, it is what it is. So anyways, let's go on to the next card, which is going to be Ghost Bell in the Haunted Mansion. Now Ghost Bell is an interesting card because this card right here can actually stop TEARLAMENTs. The only issue with this card is it's going to be chaining to the last card. So let's say they go ahead and chain block, right, with their Cowback or the Agaido, then this card can't hit it. So you would have to wait for it to be one of the TEARLAMENTs to be sent back into the deck, and then that's when you can negate that card. And that's why DD Crow is a little bit better then Ghost Spell, because DD Crow you can just hit the card, you don't have to go off of the chain. But this card is still good tech if you're able to use it. Plus it does help with any other deck, as this is super useful. It also stops call by, so yeah, even though call by is not too big in this meta. Another niche card is going to be Dimension Fortress Weapon, right? This card right here just says cards cannot be sent from the deck to the graveyard. What's really cool about this card though is, number one, it looks like it was made in the 90s. This card looks old as hell, right? But it's a level 4, so and it's a machine card. So most of the time, there's a lot of good level 4s out there for machines. And then on top of that, if you normal summon this card as a level 4, they just can't, you know, mill, which is really good for you. The only issue is this is not a going second card. So yeah, and then if they even remotely have like Solic on the field, then they could just negate this. So, and this is why Tears is so good, because even though you're like trying to counter them, they could still end up playing past you, because their trap cards have literally 0 drawback. Now we're gonna get on to probably the second best hand trap in the game right now, which is going to be Meister. Meister is actually cracked. This card can actually stop the trap cards effects in the grave, which is really nice. It can stop the tier limit monsters effect in the grave as well, and it can even stop like other spells, which is also pretty cool. Like the spell cards that go to the grave, like Scream, it will stop Scream, so it's really nice. So yeah, that's just another thing you could play. One more thing that you can play is probably going to be Artifact Sight, depending on what you're doing. If you're playing Live Twin Sprite, you could definitely play this card, right? What it really depends on though is that you're going first, obviously, because the minute that they get a shuffler into the graveyard is going to be really bad for you, because of the fact that like they could just shuffle Sight on pop activation when you go into like your Lila and Keela plays. So you would have to literally be going first to be running this, but this will essentially stop them from being able to do anything, and at that point you just win. So yeah, because you locked them out of extra deck. Another thing that you could play is the End of Anubis. This card is literally like a Necro Valley with 2500 B stick. I think it's actually a little bit worse than Necro Valley, but it's really cool because in a pure sprite match like build, you can actually end up playing this card, because if you go ahead and combine it with Mannequin Cat, the minute that they go ahead and summon out any dark monster onto the field as a special summon, you activate Mannequin Cat, and then you can immediately grab the End of Anubis, and then bam, they cannot activate any spell, trap, and monster effects that target the grave or activate in the graveyard, which means you shut off all the Tearlaments from shuffling back, you shut off all the trap cards from shuffling back. You can shut off the Shiju package, which is really cool. So yeah, it's really good at the same time. But like I said, it's really super dependent on what your opponent does. Like they would have to literally special summon a dark monster first, and the problem with that is if they go into Rhino Heart and then they activate Rhino Heart's ability, they pitch a card, right? From pitching the card, then they go ahead and summon out the Kikal. I mean, not the Kikalos, but they go ahead and summon out the Rukalos. At that point, it's not looking too good, because they're both water attribute, and obviously they can obviously go into the Kikalos, but then again, if they actually have their primitive on the field, primeval on the field, what's going to happen is their Tearlaments monster is going to get a 500 increase anyways, which means their Kikalos will go from 2300 to 2800, and we gotta assume the fact that they have Scream on the field, which they always usually do, right? And then so you're also losing 500 as well, so you're dropping down to 2000 and they're getting 500, which means there's going to be an 800 deficit, and that's really bad. But at the same time, at least you're able to like stop some of their plays. And then on top of that, by that time, I honestly think that you should already have a pretty good sprite board anyways, so it should be a little bit fine in a sense. The next goated card is going to be Necro Valley. This card is so good. I don't know why people don't play this card. If it was up to me, I would play it at 3, but I only have 2 of them. and I would definitely be playing it in Exo Sisters. Exo Sisters do not care about their graveyard, and so they are able to play this. If I had the opportunity of playing Metaverse, the trap card, I would definitely do that. That way we could turbo Necro Valley. Same thing with Land of Demise if I had space for it, right? So, but this card just says no to anything that tries to move out of the graveyard. It's just not happening. No to monsters, no to spells, no to traps. None of that is happening. And then on top of that, it's negating any card effect that tries to change type or attributes to the grave. Yeah, it literally like just kills off Zombie World 2. So yeah, it's like super good. Another card you can play is Earth Shattering Event. This card is a little interesting because if a card is sent from the deck to the graveyard, target one card in either player's graveyard, shuffle it into the deck. Also, neither player can send cards from the deck to the graveyard for the rest of this turn. So it's really cool because this is a good, pretty good going first. But if they try to go ahead and send a card to the graveyard, just shuffle it back. It's literally a DD, not a DD Crow, but like a Kelbeck. And by shuffling it back, then they can't send cards from the deck to the graveyard for the rest of the turn. The only problem is with this card is if you go ahead and shuffle a card back and they have Primeval just kind of pops this card. So, you know, it's really bad. But, you know, we do have a way to counter the Primeval, which is going to be the Cosmic Cyclone, man. Cosmic Cyclone is such an amazing card. Number one is a quick play. It takes care of back row. It takes care of Primeval, which is really cool. Let's say they go ahead and activate Primeval and you already have Cosmic Cyclone set. By the time they activate it to try to add a card to the hand, you just go ahead and pop it, you banish it, that card is gone. And the reason that the banish is so much better than it going to the graveyard, like off of like an MST or off of the Harpy's Feather Duster or Lightning Storm, is because a lot of TEARLAMENT players are now playing the Rainbow Bridge package of the Crystal Beast with the Emerald Turtle, which is where they're able to go ahead and recycle their field spell back from the literally with the power of the trap card, the Rainbow Trap card, and a power of like Kelbeck. I mean, the power of like Medora or the other one that recycles cards back into the deck, right? So literally by them just recycling that card and them having the trap card in the grave, they get the field spell back. But this literally negates that because, well, number one, you're stopping the adding addition of a TEARLAMENT, and then on top of that, you're banishing a card like as well. So that map would never come back, which is really, really cool. And it literally, what's really cool is like Crime can't even bring it back, because Crime can only bring back a banished TEARLAMENT monster. So you would never have to see this card again. Luckily, it's only at 1, but for some reason in Master Duel, everybody seems to open up with this card and they open up with Terraforming. I do not know how or why. Another card you can play, which I'm actually shocked that TEARLAMENT players are not playing in their deck as well, which is Paleozic, Dino Miscus. This card over here, number one, is not a cost, right? So what's going to happen is you discard one card, right? It's going to actually pop off your TEARLAMENT card effect in grave. So you still end up getting that effect, and then on top of that, you get a banish. So this card also counters like the basically like any of the cards. It can literally hit Primeval, it can hit the traps, it can hit the monsters. So it's really nice. Go ahead and banish those cards, get those cards off the field, and yeah, it's a really good card in my opinion. And then on top of that, like if you activate a trap card, you get like a level what? A level 2 monster by banishing this card like from the grave. Like, come on, bro. No, you did not even banish it. You can just special summon it. It's just a good card. And then after it leaves the field, you banish it. Another card you can play is D-Barrier. D-Barrier cuts off like some of the deck because not every TEARLAMENT card is a fusion. As you can see, they only literally play 3 fusions. But the issue with TEARLAMENTs is they also go into Exceed, which can either be a Baguska play or it could be a Time Thief play. So you can either use Barrier, and let's say you lock down their TEARLAMENts, but then now you're trying to go ahead and lock down their Baguska or Time Thief. You can go ahead and do that as well. And the reason you want to do that is that way they can't go into Zeus, because they do end up playing Zeus in their package. And any of the floodgates that you're playing, they could easily just get rid of because Zeus just says goodbye to everything on the field except for him. So keep that in mind. Barrier is still good because like you literally you can hit Retro, Fusion, Synchro, Exceed, or Pendulum. The only thing you can't hit is Links. I kind of really wish this card was able to hit Links. I think it would be fantastic. Finally, we do have Evenly Matched. Literally one of the greatest cards ever printed. I think this is the most broken card I've ever seen in my life. Literally, this card hits me and it hates me, and I see it all the time. But basically, this card just says main phase, battle phase, and the battle phase banish all the cards on the field except for one. And the reason this is so good against Tearlaments, because if they have their traps set up and they have like the screen set up and some Tearlament monster set up, they're gonna obviously keep one of their Tearlament monsters, or they're gonna keep one of the traps. And the thing about this is the trap cards need Tearlaments, right, to use their effects. If they have no Tearlaments, then they can't use the effect, which means they will probably end up keeping a monster just in case. So everything just gets banished. Like, yeah, you end up losing your battle phase, but at that point, like, you wiping their whole field is just huge, right? So yeah. Another thing you can play is Shadow Imprisoning Mirror. I suggest you play this card if you can. It negates all dark monsters effects on the field and in the graveyard. And if you haven't noticed, bam, that is a negate on that card. That's a negate on this card. Negate here. You know, we're negating this. We're also negating Kick Hollows. And the only thing that we're not negating is literally the Rook and also the Rhino Heart. But being able to negate like every other card except for 2 cards out of Tearlaments on field and engrave is actually huge. That because then like the only thing they can end up going into at this point is the Rook Hollows, and then from the Rook Hollows, I don't really know if they can do anything from there at that point, because that card just locks them down. Another thing you could play is probably Super Ancient Organism. This card does lock down their big boys, which is Rook, and it also locks down Kalido. But other than that, I probably wouldn't play it. This card's really not that great, and it also locks your stuff down as well. So unless you really care, like Flu on the Reeds, if Flu wanted to play this, they could, because they don't play any special summon monsters. But yeah, like I personally, I probably wouldn't play it, but you know, it is another tech that you can go ahead and look into it. As level 6 or higher special summon monsters on the field cannot attack, nor can players activate their effects. So yeah. Finally, the best card, in my opinion, as of right now, trap-wise, Soul Drain. Soul Drain is literally Necro Valley for monsters on crack. Literally just says no to all their stuff. Literally does not care what they're doing. The only issue with Soul Drain is if they have Prim and they're able to like shuffle a card back in some type of way, they can. So do keep that in mind, right? Because I noticed that some people also play Heartbeat, which I barely ever see. But by targeting one spell and trap on the field, they can shuffle a card into the deck. So do keep that in mind. But yes, guys, this is what you guys can play. As you can see, pretty good. Like 17 cards for the most part is not bad. 17 different techs. Go ahead and try what you think works. I personally would probably play. Oh, I forgot to talk about Rivalry. Rivalry just completely shuts them down, completely. Especially if they just go into like a Reinhardt. Reinhardt's the only warrior. Other than Reinhardt's literally the only warrior, so it literally just shuts them down. Like there's nothing they can do after that. But yeah, this is like cards you can play. You can take a look at There Can Only Be One. I don't really think it's that good against this. And also Gozen. Gozen's decent, but Rivalry is probably the best one. But because it's a one of, because I guess they knew that this deck was coming, like that's why. So yeah, go ahead and take a look. Another thing is Abyss Dweller. You guys know Dweller. Dweller's pretty good against Tearlament matchups. I mean, it's not a killer, but it's pretty good. But yeah, guys, thank you all for tuning in. I'm sorry this video went kind of long, but yeah. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. See ya. Peace.